The future of tobacco and CBD regulation now hanging in the balance following the sudden resignation of FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb late this afternoon. Let's go to Aditi Roy out in San Francisco with the details. And it was quite a surprise, Aditi.
It was a huge surprise, Scott. Tobacco and e-cigarette use among youth is Scott Gottlieb's hallmark issue. And starting last year, he launched an aggressive campaign against companies like Juul, Altria, and British American Tobacco. Tobacco stocks like Philip Morris as well, moving higher upon today's news. Altria, which took a 35% stake in Juul, you may remember last year, jumped as much as 3% on the resignation news before paring its gains. Last week, Gottlieb also announced plans to hold public meetings in April on CBD, adding a comment that it might take 1 to 2 years to finalize regulations on CBD products. Now, cannabis stocks didn't appear to react significantly to the news. Incidentally, the commissioner was also on our air for a live interview on Squawk Box this morning to talk about the agency going after 15 retailers for allegedly selling tobacco products to kids. He also talked about the possible consequences businesses could face.
There are actions that we can take now. We can send corporate-wide warning letters. We can certainly sanction individual stores. We have a lot of civil penalties that we can impose. We've never imposed a criminal sanction, but we certainly have imposed civil sanctions in the past. And we have gone as far as issuing, for example, corporate warning letters in other situations across our regulatory portfolio, and something that's certainly open to us in this situation.
The big question, of course, now among industry watchers, whether or not the agency will carry out those enforcement measures that he just talked about and regulations against e-cigarettes. Keep in mind, Gottlieb still has a month left on the job to finish what he started. Scott, back to you.
Okay, Aditi, thanks so much. So what could this mean for both the cigarette and pot stocks? Resident expert.
Well, I'll tell you, Scott, I think in terms of CBD regulation and what the FDA's role is, it was so fluid and it's been so fluid that I think this doesn't have any implication at all. I'm not going to try to read the tea leaves on Scott Gottlieb's resignation. He's talked about family issues. He's got 3 young kids. He's commuting from Connecticut to Washington. It's very possible that's what's going on here. I do think this is a guy who's been very hard against vaping, e-cigarettes, the tobacco companies, period. And I think in that regard, there may be a little bright light for those guys here, but I don't think the environment really changes. And again, back to pot stocks, specifically CBD, which still, although you've legalized hemp federally in terms of the ability to move it across 18-wheelers from state to state, you still don't have definition for how that fits into products. Ultimately, I think it's a really exciting market. We know the kind of growth that's going on in CBD. It's great for the multi-state operators who have footprints right now to be, basically selling those products when the FDA gets their act together.
And I agree on the multi-state operators. I think that's where there's a huge potential right now. I mean, especially if regulation decreases and suddenly these multi-state operators have access to bank financing so they can really grow their business. I think there's huge potential there. For our clients, we prefer companies like Constellation Brands right now, where there's actually some diversification in revenues, because for us, it is still a speculative play at this point in time.